What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, undefeated, former Olympic silver medalist who should have been Olympic gold medalist, former WBO featherweight world champion, superstar boxer, Shakur Stevenson, 23 years of age. He's 15-0, 8 wins by way of knockout, stands at 5'8", has a 68-inch, 69-inch arm reach. He puts the longest reigning champion in the sport of boxing, the WBC featherweight world champions, 31 wins, 1 loss, 18 wins by way of knockout. Mr. Gary Russell Jr., 32 years of age, stands at 5'4", 5'5", 64-inch arm reach, has 1 blemish on his resume that came at the hands of 3-division world champion, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, Vasil High-Tech Lomachenko. That's the blemish on his resume. Gary Russell Jr., he did an interview in which he, responded and gave his thoughts on Buddy McGirt, former world champion turned colorful legendary trainer. Buddy McGirt, he stated that Shakur Stevenson was being carefully maneuvered through his career. And if he went up and faced better opposition, such as undefeated, unified WBC franchise champion, WBO, WBA, IBF, Ring Magazine, lightweight world champion, superstar boxer Teofimo Lopez, he would get knocked out if he fought guys on that level. Obviously, Shakur Stevenson responded to Buddy McGirt. He had some choice words for him. So Gary Russell was asked about this entire equation, and Gary Russell said that Shakur Stevenson was fighting tomato cans and that styles make fights, and he's carefully matched properly so he could look great in those fights. And I beg to differ because I said in Shakur Stevenson's first 15 fights in his career, if you go back and you look at the first 15 fights of Gary Russell's career and the first 15 fights of Teofimo Lopez's career, Shakur Stevenson has a better resume than Gary Russell's. He's fought better opposition, more winning opposition, and Teofimo Lopez is on the same par as Shakur Stevenson. They're both signed with Top Rank, legendary promoter, Top Rank CEO Bob Arum. And if you look at their resume, it's on par with one another. With that said, Shakur Stevenson once again responds to Gary Russell Jr., and he puts him on notice. He says that Gary Russell Jr. continues to talk about a sparring session that took place in which Gary Russell Jr. is portraying that he got the best of Shakur Stevenson in his sparring session, and Shakur Stevenson let it be known that I've sparred everybody that's from 130 to 140 and even higher. He says that only one person got the better of me in sparring one time, and that was undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the WBO welterweight world champion, who is widely considered the best fighter in the world, Terrence Bud Crawford. He says Terrence Crawford is the only one that got the best of me, and I even rectified that in other sparring sessions. He says that Gary Russell Jr., we sparred one time. For the most part, I was sparring your little brothers, and they are 2 and 3 weight classes above me, and yet they didn't even get the best of me. He says that is completely untrue. He says, and now after I get this belt, if you don't know, Shakur Stevenson is on par to face the winner of Jamel Herring, Carl Frampton fight. They, I believe, will fight March 20th, if I'm not mistaken. And he stated that once I get that belt, he's fighting the winner of that belt at 135 now. At 130. He was at 126 with Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. is the WBC 126-pound champion. He's the longest reigning champion since Deontay Wilder was dethroned by Tyson Fury. So with that said, he states that once I get this belt from that winner, I'm taking all comers, you included. So he lets it be known that if Gary Russell Jr. wants this action after he gets this belt, then he's taking all comers. Now, Shakur Stevenson is also on par should he fight Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring winner. Me personally, I'm favoring Carl Frampton to win the fight. That would be a big fight for Shakur Stevenson. Carl Frampton has a huge following. Carl Frampton is former world champion, multi-divisions. Carl Frampton is a Hall of Famer. So I believe that's a huge fight for Shakur Stevenson. And I believe he will beat Carl Frampton. But he's also on par to unify the 130-pound division because he's also looking to secure a showdown unification bout with Oscar Valdez versus Miguel Berchelt winner. That's scheduled to take place February 20th. So with that said, he's looking to get the winner of that fight as well. And he would then hold, because I believe he will beat Oscar Valdez or Miguel Berchelt, whomever wins that fight. And so with that said, he would be the WBC, because Miguel Berchelt has a WBC. So he's defending against Oscar Valdez. And Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring, they're fighting for the WBO. So he would be the WBC, WBO champion at that point in time, right? So those are huge fights on the table for Shakur Stevenson. So, but a fight between Shakur Stevenson and Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. expressed that he does have interest in going up to 130 pounds. He wants to be the mandatory challenger. He's the WBC holder at 126. So he's looking to go up and, be the mandatory for Miguel Berchelt's belt. Well, with that said, he's going to have a fight up at 130 before he becomes the mandatory, because the WBO operates in that fashion where you move up, you automatically jump to the front of the line and you're automatically the mandatory, but the WBC does not operate like that, okay? Thus the reason why Shakur Stevenson is the mandatory for Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring winner, because it's the WBO belt. He held the WBO at 126. So with that said, if Gary Russell Jr. does come to 130, he has a fight at 130. Shakur Stevenson beats Carl Frampton, because I believe, this is just my opinion, he beats Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring winner, and then he fights Miguel Berchelt, Oscar Valdez winner, and beats them. Well, guess what? Gary Russell at this point in time would be the mandatory challenger for Shakur Stevenson. Now, Shakur Stevenson is looking to secure all these fights very soon. He's looking for the the Jamel Herring, Carl Frampton winner, as he stated, in April or May. He says, after April or May, I'm taking all comers, including Gary Russell Jr., right? So he stated that, he wants that fight in May. So this fight is scheduled, their fight, Jamel Herring, Carl Frampton fight, I don't know if they'll be ready in May, because they have a fight coming up. That's a quick turnaround for them. So they're fighting, Carl Frampton and Jamel Herring are fighting February 27th, okay? So February 27th, March, April, more than likely it will have to be the end of May, okay? To give them time to recover, barring any injuries, so on and such, right? Because February 27th is a quick turnaround for them to turn around in May. That only gives them a month. Let's say it was in, April 27th. That gives them, a month, 2 months to recover. May seems more realistic to get the winner for Shakur Stevenson, okay? Then he's going to obviously look. So you have Miguel Berchelt, Oscar Valdez. They're fighting February 20th, okay? So they're on par. They're all on the same time frame. Now, I don't know if Oscar Valdez, Miguel Berchelt winner is going to sit on the shelf until September, because that would be around the time they'll fight again, right? They're fighting February 20th. So Shakur Stevenson fights on the end of May against Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring winner, and he beats them. He won't be ready until at least September, okay? So that means that Oscar Valdez, Oscar Valdez is 28-0. Miguel Berchelt is 37-1, 33 by way of knockout. Are they going to sit on the shelf that long and wait for Shakur Stevenson? Now, it would be advised, because it would be a huge fight for them. But that means that if all goes according to plan, if Shakur Stevenson fights the winner in May, then he fights Oscar Valdez, Miguel Berchelt winner in September, well, that means he could fight Gary Russell Jr., who seemingly right now is only fighting once a year. So if he could get the Gary Russell Jr. fight, Gary Russell has a fight, let's say around May, at 130. And then he fights Shakur Stevenson in the end of the year. Because Shakur Stevenson, I would expect him to beat Oscar Valdez, Miguel Berchelt winner. And like I stated, he will beat Carl Frampton, Jamel Herring winner. So if that goes according to plan, let's say he fought in May, fought in September, he will be available in December, right? Or maybe even November, right? But so you could get Gary Russell Jr., Shakur Stevenson in a massive showdown to close out the year. I think this is a necessary fight. Obviously, Gary Russell is 10 years older than Shakur Stevenson, but the comments made by Gary Russell makes it seem as if Shakur Stevenson has been, dare I say, cherry picking, right? It's carefully being match made to fit the correct style. As Gary Russell stated that, these guys don't want to match up with certain guys because styles make fights, and your style is not going to allow you to look spectacular against certain styles. So he alluded to, and he just flat out said, Shakur Stevenson is fighting tomato cans. Okay, so this would be a huge fight. They're both southpaws. This would be a massive, massive fight, for both guys, right? Like I said, Shakur Stevenson is bigger than Gary Russell Jr. He's at 5'8". He's younger, 10 years younger. He has a 69-inch arm reach. Gary Russell Jr., he has he's pretty short arms. Okay, Gary Russell Jr. has 64-inch arm reach at 5'5". But Gary Russell Jr. is accustomed to being a smaller guy in the ring, so that means nothing because he has lightning fast hands, and he is very accurate and a high ring IQ. He's very precise with his punches. Shakur Stevenson has a 68-inch arm reach, so he has a 4-inch height advantage and a 4-inch arm reach advantage over Gary Russell Jr. So this would be a very, very high level, high quality, high pace chess match because both guys have high ring IQs and very, very sharp and have great boxing ability. I believe that Shakur Stevenson has more power than Gary Russell Jr. So this would make for an interesting fight, and this would help Gary Russell's career because Gary Russell has not been active. He hasn't had big fights, and this would be a huge fight for Gary Russell Jr. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. I love the mindset of Shakur Stevenson. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notification. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.